भैसच्य गुरु वैडूर्य प्रभराजाय तथागताय अर्हते सम्यक् सम्बुद्धाय तद्यथा भैसच्य राजसमुद्गते स्वाहा ॐ नमो भगवते भैसच्य गुरु वैडूर्य प्रभराजाय तथागताय अर्हते सम्यक् सम्बुद्धाय तद्यथा ॐ भै
Hello, everyone. I am Teja. Welcome to this very special and intimate session hosted by Sisters in Spirit with Dr. Anita Dudhane. I would just like to share a few words with you about Sisters in Spirit and about Dr. Anita Dudhane before we start the session. And of course, I would request, this is a very intimate gathering, and if any of you don't have a problem keeping your video on, it's always very nice for the speaker to see who they are interacting with. It's going to be a very informal, interactive, friendly session. So I set up Sisters in Spirit last year in November 2020 during the pandemic, which is of course ongoing, because I really felt the need to both create a special Sangha for myself, but also to help for the wisdom and compassion teachings which form the foundation of Buddha's teachings to reach very contemporary audiences, with an intersection on how these teachings intersect with science, with art, with activism. So the reason we're organizing, let's say, this open heart conversation with Dr. Anita is because part of my aspiration is also to create an archive of interviews and conversations, especially with women practitioners who may not be highly realized or extremely renowned or well-known teachers of Buddhism, but who are, in their day-to-day life, putting the teachings and practices which they have acquired from different spiritual traditions, especially from Buddhism, into their day-to-day life, and share what are the difficulties and what are the joys and how do we progress on this journey, and for us to draw inspiration from these stories of people who are just like us, going forward in this spiritual journey. So I welcome you all to this session, and I would like to share very quickly something about Dr. Anita Dudhane, apart from what you may have already read in the material that we had shared with you. So Dr. Anita Dudhane, she loves her profession. She loves being a doctor. She is an allergist and a clinical immunologist, only one of two such specialists, super specialists in India. And Dr. Anita is normally based in Goa. And apart from being quite a busy doctor who is high in demand, and especially you can imagine with the pandemic, the COVID symptoms very closely also manifest as allergy-related symptoms. So there's a lot of overlap between the two. So she has been extremely busy since March last year, and we will get her insight on this situation. Apart from this, she is a mother. She has two children, Aditya and Rika. I mentioned that because these are things which are going to come up in our conversation. And they have a little bit of an unusual family setup because when Aditya was 7 and Rika was 5, Dr. Anita was the primary working parent, and her husband decided to retire early. So he was the one at home and the primary person in terms of parenting the children. Of course, she was also very involved, but there is just a slight difference in dynamic, and we will see how this, what kind of situations this brings up. Dr. Anita has been very instrumental in setting up the Dalai Lama Chair for Nalanda Studies at the Goa University, and also for setting up Nalanda Shiksha, which is requesting His Holiness the Dalai Lama to give yearly teachings on behalf of the Indian Sangha. She's also playing a key role in bringing social, emotional, and ethical learning curriculum to schools at state level in Goa, and runs many medical camps in grassroots communities, including in Tibetan communities in exile, especially in Karnataka. She wrote a newspaper column for more than a year in the, I think it was in the Navhind Times. I will be sharing a link with you of this. So there is so much to say. She's also very passionate about nature, about art, about aesthetics, about reading. She loves meditation. So there are such a rich facet to Dr. Anita. And she's also taking very serious studies with the 𝗔ih𝗶𝘁 at Tibet House, New Delhi for the last 5 years, the Nalanda Master's course. So she keeps herself extremely, she's a very busy person. So we are very, very grateful to Dr. Anita for joining us for this open heart conversation. I'm personally very grateful to her for being a Sangha member and somebody I can approach for help, for advice, and as a sounding board, just to share, the spiritual journey is such a landscape of so many ups and downs and plateaus. So it's always good to have this journey be a shared journey, and that's why Sangha is one of the 3 jewels that Buddha Shakyamuni outlined. So with that, I welcome Dr. Anita Dudhane, and I would request her to maybe please turn on her video as well as her audio.
Hi.
Hi, Dr. Anita. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Dr. Anita, this is a very informal conversation. So of course, I'm going to ask Anita ji some questions, but our participants, our audiences who are here, you're very welcome to also during the conversation, unmute yourself and directly ask questions to Dr. Anita. It would be very good if, we can interact with each other. So while I've given this long bio of Dr. Anita, in her modesty and humility, and I think it's also very touching when we were discussing about the conversation today, she especially requested that, we also speak about just the ordinariness and ordinary person's struggle to keep all these strands running together, and especially as a woman, and also how one puts the Buddhist teachings into practice in a very day-to-day, practical, down-to-earth way. So Dr. Anita, you were in New York in the 90s, I think in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, and your doctoral research had to do with HIV/AIDS. And HIV, as we know, is human immunodeficiency virus. So we're also dealing with a virus there. And you had a very successful career, both you as well as your husband. And your research was quite groundbreaking. Maybe you could share a little bit about that. And, you were set, you were going to have a very successful career, be a very well-established doctor in the United States, and have all the possible facilities in the world. But something happened, and you decided to drop all of that and moved back to India and moved back to your home state of Goa. And also you started to turn towards spirituality and the spiritual path and seriously seeking what the spiritual path might have to offer to us. So can you share with us what happened?
Hi, Tejal and everybody else. I can't see all of you, but I can see a couple. Kalsangla, hi. Yes, I definitely, was working with HIV/AIDS in New York at that time. And that was just like COVID is today. HIV was at that time. And if you worked with HIV, again, I went into HIV only because I desperately wanted to do allergies and clinical immunology, and they wouldn't give it to a foreigner. I was a foreign medical graduate. So everything is serendipity and coincidence. And so they said, if you work on HIV, then we'll give you this field. So that's how I went into it. So nothing in my life has come out of, choosing, except going into medicine, which I always wanted to go into medicine. Everything else has just happened. And so I was working there, and the research that you're talking about that we did, and again, very, very fortunate. I had a fabulous mentor called Dr. Michael Hoffman. He was at Sloan Kettering and at in NYU, where I was working as well. And so he said to me, he said, if you have any ideas, do it on your time. So I was working at night doing some things. And luckily, again, I was supposed to work with this person called 𝗔ih𝗶𝘁, who is very, very well known. He wrote the HIV chapter in our Bible, Harrison, but he didn't like women. So, so I was sitting outside waiting in the snow, and he said, I don't want to work with you. I don't like women. He didn't like women. He just liked women. And so then I came back really demoralized, and I said, what do I do now? And there was an Indian woman called Asha Gupta, who was the head of pediatric immunology. So I went to her and she said, you can work with me with my babies, but you have to be very, very careful with the blood I give you. And you can only use 2 ml, and you have to work very, very hard and make sure that everything you get is out of that 2 ml, because they're small, tiny babies. And that was the biggest piece of luck that happened, because the babies, because they were born with the virus, they didn't have time to have all the other infections. So we got some groundbreaking results with that study. And we discovered how CD4 T cells were actually deleted in HIV, and the entire co-stimulatory pathway and the whole lot of stuff. So total, absolute luck. And then, of course, Dr. 𝗔ih𝗶𝘁 came to speak to Michael to say, I want to work with you. And Michael said, no, it's Anita has to decide whether she'll work with you, And then he said, what should we do? And I said, no, we will. And Gary was on my thesis committee at the end. So he started to like women after that, I guess. So there was some positive to that. And he gave me one of the best reference letters that I can ever imagine. So that went. But then while working with this, and because there was such little material I could work with, and I had to work only on Thursdays, so I had to work whole night, literally, that I was so tired that while I was using the blood, I stuck myself with the HIV needle, and the blood went in. And those days, in the late 90s, we didn't know whether we were positive for about 6 months. And that, I was 28 years old, and it changed my life completely. It's very easy to say that you will die, you're ready to die, till it actually happens to you. And then you look at it and you say, oh my God, what have I done with my life? I was a type A personality, at all the degrees, at all the marks, and everything possible, but I had not lived. I had not lived at all. And all the papers, all those things were there, but I had not lived. So I took 3 months off and stayed home to think about what I wanted to do next if I was positive indeed. And those days, there was not that much of, only AZT was available. There was not much treatment. And so while I was sitting at home, I went to the bookstore and I found the Dalai Lama's book. And, I'd asked a lot of questions from childhood. I grew up in a reasonably spiritual family, but they couldn't answer any of my questions, especially about caste, about gender, about these things that I kept asking. And so this book answered everything that I had been asking for years. And so I started on this path with the book. So like I said, life-changing experience happened at 28. And then I decided, I really looked and I said, what do I do next? And then I felt that perhaps coming back to India and serving here made more sense. And also, again, serendipity, my husband his company moved to Barbados. We went to Barbados together. And then he moved to India because he had to set up a company here. And so nothing's really planned. I think it's just like a river flows and we flow with the river. And wherever we are, we make the best of what we have. And I think that's what happened.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anita, for sharing with us so intimately. Which book was it by His Holiness, if you don't mind sharing with us?
I think it was The Universe in an Atom, or The Art of Happiness. It's one of the two. But I think it's A Universe in the Atom.
And may I ask you that what is it about the Buddhist teaching that you read initially at that time, at this very crucial moment in your life? What were some of the key teachings that made you feel that, okay, my questions are answered? Or, what were those key teachings?
So as a scientist, it was very hard for me to, answer the question about God, for example. And, where is this creator God? That was for me one big thing. And here there was no dogma involved. There was no creator God involved. You didn't have to believe anything with faith, The most important thing was reason, that I could question. Because from the age of 3, I remember asking my father, why do certain people come from the back door? What is this about, But, they always said this is how it is. And you have to accept it and work with this. But here, I could actually work with reason. I could take what I wanted, not take what I didn't want. I could question. And this, I've never found anywhere else, the lack of any kind of dogma, and strong belief system. There was no one who said, if you believe in me, I'll take you to God, or you have to believe to do this. The Buddha clearly says, he says, take what you want, check it out. If this makes sense to you, then do it. If not, then leave it, So this primarily was what attracted me. And then, of course, the other concept of dependent arising. Because if you work in any kind of medicine, especially the immune system, it's just a dance, of thousands of things, millions of things coming together. They have to work like that to be able to get in a certain way. Anything that's static, the immune system just doesn't work. And it's, only when you do that, you realize, when you work with something like this, how amazingly complicated this human body is and how these things are, And dependent origination is the only thing that can really answer this entire miracle of life, as I call it, And so that was the other thing that really deeply attracted me, and again made complete sense to where I was at that time. And the third thing, of course, also that how happiness comes from within us. And at that time, thinking I was going to die, and thinking that the death was not going to be a nice one, because I've seen lots of HIV patients at that time dying quite horribly. That also, of course, the peace of mind that comes from it. So these were the things that attracted me.
Thank you. And may I ask you, so in the subsequent years, you have quite a strong I mean, in Buddhism, it's highly recommended that the wisdom of learning, the wisdom of reflection, and the wisdom of meditation, all these three wisdoms are needed in tandem. And in you, I find a very prime example of somebody who really tries to bring all those three strands together. I mean, as an academic, as someone, who has always been involved in, being a doctor is probably one of those professions where the amount of study and the vast amount of material that you're absorbing is probably one of those professions from the mundane world that is coming close to the amount of vast material that somebody who gets a doctorate in Buddhist studies in a traditional college, at least in the Tibetan monastic system, and I'm sure this is true also for the Pali tradition. So there's this vast amount of material. You have a very deep academic interest, but you also have a very strong contemplative practice. You have a meditation practice, and I would like you to speak about the interplay of how you went, what was your journey with the contemplative practice, both as a doctor. How does mindfulness or even other analytical meditations such as awareness of awareness or meditation on emptiness, could you speak a little bit both how your journey has been in developing these contemplative practices and how you see it being applied in your life?
So the thing with medicine and Buddhist studies, it's so close, like you said, upon all professions. It's the one that goes closer. In fact, the Buddha uses medicine quite often as he says, truth of suffering. At that time he says it's like the disease, and then the origin is the cause of the suffering, what is causing it, for example. And the cessation is the medicine that you take and what medicine you take, So he uses the doctor and medicine analogy quite a lot. So medicine is very similar to the studies we're doing. The basic medical studies of 4.5 years is intense study. Then you do a MD, which is a post-graduation, which is now narrowing it down. And then you do a fellowship, which really narrows it down. Okay. So the large amount of 4.5 years is spent in learning. There's a large amount of learning. There's not so much of reflection or so much of practice, but there is a large amount of learning. And so you have to know many, 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 many things. And then you put them together, right? And when you go into your 3 years of post-graduation, you do much more practice, but you do learning 50% and 50% practice. And when you go into fellowship, you do a large amount of practice and less of learning. Okay. Similarly with Buddhist studies, there's a huge amount of learning to be done. You can't take shortcuts. If you don't have those 4.5 years of medicine and you don't have the large amount of study, what are you going to reflect on? And what are you going to practice? You wouldn't even know you're going the wrong direction unless you have a large amount of study. Medicine, what happens when you do all that? And now I've been practicing medicine for, I think, 30 years. So in 30 years, it's intuitive. When a patient walks in and the patient sits down and the patient starts to talk, I have a clear idea, very, very deep at a gut level, at a physical level, what the patient has. And now I don't have to think anymore. So things just fall into place because of all that study for so many years. So similarly with meditation, when you have a solid grounding of study, then when you're sitting in the meditation, it falls into place and you have a physical gut level understanding of the concept which comes in. And when that comes in, then it stays. You'll never, ever lose that realization. Realization learned from just learning, you'll forget. I mean, we all know, 2 years from, forget 2 years, 2 days from now, you'll forget what you learned today. But if you have a reflection, you've thought it through and you've sat down and meditated, then it becomes such a deep understanding that you'll never forget. So that's the analogy between medicine, the study of medicine and study of Buddhism. On a more practical level, I think anything, even medicine, if a lot of people today learn medicine from Google, everyone's a doctor. It's quite interesting when people come and they say, no, but I've read this and I've read this, but you haven't practiced it. You have no idea. You haven't seen 100,000 patients that we have seen. So that brings into it something, right? So similarly, with meditation, unless you have that meditation, I mean, you have to have practice, okay? So where in my day-to-day life, this has worked, for example, as I really credit my not getting COVID because of mindfulness. When the patient comes, if you have a very strong mindfulness practice, then you won't touch your nose, you won't touch your mouth, you won't do things like that. You wash your hands, you remember to wash your hands. This is, when you do something, it's habit. When you've done it for a long time, it doesn't become stressful. Otherwise, it's very stressful to keep remembering. So in medicine, there's a wonderful author called Atul Gawande. So he writes about something called checklist, a book called Checklist. If you follow the checklist, you can save a very large number of lives. And $1 billion a year in the US is saved by just making doctors wash their hands. We just don't wash our hands before we touch the patient. So if you just have a checklist and you have a nurse reminding you to say, wash your hands, doctor, then, you can save all this money. So similarly with COVID, just washing hands, mindfulness. That's in this pandemic, but even otherwise, when the patient comes and sits in front of you, if you can clear your mind completely and listen to what the person is saying, even if they don't fall into a box that our medicine has taught us that diseases fall into. Because what we do is we say A, B, C, they fall together, and so you have malaria. You have fever, you have chills, you have this, so it's malaria, But let's say the patient has the fever, it has chills, but doesn't have something else. Then we say the patient, especially if it's a woman, we say hysterical, doesn't fall into this, is a malingerer, many things like that, But to listen to what the patient says, because the patient really knows their body, So, and to see maybe it doesn't fall into the pattern, but to listen. So that mindfulness is of great use. So what I usually would do practically is I go out and bring the patient in, and that gives me that 1 minute gap to bring the person in. And then after I finish, I escort them out. So I let them go and I forget their thing. So I clear my mind to bring the next person. Otherwise, you're carrying the previous patient in your mind and you can't give the next person the attention they require. So in that sense, I think meditation has really helped in my life per se. The emptiness meditation is a very advanced practice. We've been learning it with Geshe-la. That helps when there's something terribly stressful. My son tested positive in the US. He's 22 years old. We were in India at that time. And there's the worry, but something like that, I noticed, again, not by trying, I noticed that my mind was so clear. There was no fear, there was no worry. And I think I attribute this to the emptiness meditation that we've been doing and thinking and talking about, that everything is totally dependent, and if you, and Shantideva's Bodhisattva Shantideva saying, if you can do something about it, do something. If you can't, then what's the point, So these things come into place, and it's also a measure, hardships that come is a measure to see how far you've got into your practice and whether it is actually working. If there was no hardship, how would you even know? You just continue thinking you knew it all, So these are checkpoints that you have to, I think, see, does this work or not work,
Thank you so much, Dr. Anita. Dr. Anita, as a doctor, there is almost people depend on you for their life and death. And doctors are very often, kind of given this godlike position. because people's lives are, to get pride. I'm sorry, can you hear? Hello, you can hear me, Dr.
Yeah,
Anita?
yeah. I
Yeah.
heard some of the parts you talked about doctors and godlike personalities.
Yeah. So, it's very easy for one's ego to get inflated and to carry pride. And of course, in the Buddhist teachings, there is something called the 8 worldly concerns. And I'm just going to, share screen because I just, maybe not all our viewers who are here are aware of what the 8 worldly concerns are. So just a moment, please. Okay, so there are these 8 worldly concerns or mundane concerns that generally motivate the actions of ordinary beings. A lot of our actions are motivated either hope of gain and fear of loss, or hope of pleasure, fear of pain, hope for good reputation, hope for praise, fear of bad reputation, and fear of blame. So I imagine that this is something you've had to really grapple and deal with. Can you share either through some anecdotes or through your own experience how you work through this and start to get under the skin of the ego, but without necessarily neither you don't lose your self-confidence either?
Well, the one good thing about learning and working in the US for a while before I came to India is that medicine is considered a profession like a plumber or anything else. so when the patients come to you, they have researched you completely, and when they come, they have great in-depth expectations, and they very clear expectations. So and like a plumber is supposed to fix the tap when they come. I mean, you were supposed to fix them when they come. So that's very clear, very clear. So that is a nice place to learn that you're not anything greater than what you are, which is slightly glorified plumber or whatever it is. So whereas in India it is different. People keep their slippers outside when they come to see you. When the parents come, the hope in their eyes when they bring this child who's ill. Yesterday I got a picture of a child from England who she had brought during COVID. A child was so severely eczematous that she said, I'd rather chance COVID than go through this with my child every night with this kind of itching and difficulties that child is going through. So it's today is his 3rd birthday. So she sent me his picture and she said, can you give him your blessings? Can you imagine? I mean, it's my job as a doctor to treat him, not to give him blessings. I'm no one. I mean, really no realization, nothing great. It's just a manual worker with the body as such, And she said, so, when they put you up on these pedestals, then it's really hard sometimes to get over yourself, and you have to be very, very watchful that you don't let this go to your mind. Now, the one way to do this is to really feel that it's not me that's doing it. There is again an extreme dependent origination. I'm in the right place at the right time. Of course, with the self-confidence also, it's not me at all. It's not like that. Of course, I've had such a lot of training, and there is, effort that has gone into being what I am right now with all my degrees. But I'm not the be-all and the end-all. There is something else. So being a Buddhist gives me an out that this patient has a karma with me. And if I can treat the patient, it's because of that karma I have with that patient. And if I can't, then I don't have a karma of that patient. So it also keeps you very, very grounded to know that I can't heal every single person. But my teacher gave me a very good advice once. He said that when the patient comes in, he said, you think that I'm physically treating you at this time, but in future lifetimes, may I also bring you to mental peace and to enlightenment. So even whether I can treat the person now or not, there is allergies are I think about only about 75 to 80% of the people get well. So there's a good number that doesn't. But even if I can't do it now, I can hopefully in the future lifetimes take you to enlightenment and let me be this. So that gives you also both a good balance to not think that I can do it all, but same time do something for the person. The praise is hard again, because when people talk very highly of you, again, I think of myself as a fad at the moment. I'm a fad in Delhi, especially Delhi drawing rooms. Have you been to Goa? Do you have a house in Goa? And do you have that doctor? You know, that's the third one. So, so I am a fad at this moment. So as fads go, I will last for a few more years, I guess. I've lasted for a little longer than I would have normally thought, but I am a fad. So when the fad goes, one wrong thing, someone said something to someone, it's going to go, and then it's going to be all negatives, So it's okay. I mean, but as long as I know I'm a fad and I'm a short plastic fad, I'm okay with it. There are times, for example, when it's also a great practice to see, when someone calls me Anita, and they don't call me Dr. Anita. It's quite interesting, how two things happen. One, when they call me Anita, they think that they can call me at any time of the night and day for anything at all. If they call me Dr. Anita, then they know that there's a balance to be maintained. They can't just call. So it's quite interesting. And from my perspective also, I can see it pinching when they say Anita. And I say, I've worked so hard for these degrees. Would you call a male doctor by their name? Would you call a male doctor by this? But then a female doctor, how come you're so comfortable with calling? So it shows my ego coming up as well at these points. And I see how tight I get. So it's quite amazing, that to see it as a practice. Reputation, it's very tough. Yes, very, very attached to it. So one teacher said that the last thing to go is reputation, attachment to reputation. Last thing. After 7 years of solitary retreat, she came out. And I said to her, and she said, the last thing, she said, attachment to a reputation, you don't want. So as doctors, we also very susceptible to people's opinions. We weren't earlier, but now with Google, we are very susceptible. So I had this patient call me and ask for share an appointment. And I am very anal about time and maintaining appointments. In India and Goa, it's the hardest thing in the world, because in Goa, almost nobody comes on time, if they come at all, And this woman didn't show up. So at 9, and we call her, my office calls 2 times prior. They call in the morning. We wake people up to say, you have an appointment at 9:30. Otherwise, you don't show up, And the others waiting. They were waiting list to put in, So therefore, and she didn't show up. She didn't even call to say she's not coming. And then the husband called me at 2:45, just before I was going to give a lecture at the university, and said, oh, we didn't come. So I want another appointment. And I said, but you didn't even tell me, that you were not coming and you can't get another appointment. And so he spoke in Hindi. So I don't know whether it is a way in Hindi it's acceptable. And he said, bolte ja rahe ho, And so I got really mad at him, and I said to him, you are talking to the doctor, you're not talking to my assistant. Not that he should be speaking to her at this way. And he said, yeah, I know I'm talking, but And so I said to him, you're very rude, and I switched it off. And she gave me a horrible Google review. It's my first terrible Google review. I've never had one. And so, it was quite interesting how I felt. I would have never thought I would feel so bad, with all my Buddhist meditation. And I was gutted. I said, how can someone give me such a 3 nights I didn't sleep. and so my husband said, what use all your Buddhist practice? He said, just ignore it, So I said, no, I can't ignore it. What if other patients read it and they don't come because of this? So I answered back and I said, this is what happened or whatever. So, repetition is a very, very difficult thing, because we're so addicted to wanting everyone to say good things about us, especially we women. And I'm going to qualify it more so by saying Indian women, because from childhood, we are taught to, suppress our emotions, suppress what we think, and do what others want of us. What will others say? Your clothing, the way you sit, the way you speak, what you speak, everything is monitored by what will others say. So, when you're constantly brought up with that, it's hard to give up when someone says something bad about you, to accept it and to go on with it. So all these four worldly concerns, and also gain and loss, money. I mean, I wish to God that I was working in a government hospital where I didn't have to worry about money, But when you're in a private setting and the patient has to pay you, money also again puts a very dirty, murky thing into it. You need the money to survive. Otherwise, you can't keep the clinic open. I'm luckier than most that my husband sold his company and retired, so I don't have to worry so much about money. And I'm surrounded by family who supports my work. But still, so money brings in this other dimension into medicine, which is really not a nice dimension. So all these 8 worldly concerns are so deeply intertwined in our daily practice that I think my practice of medicine shows me every single day where I can falter, and fall, and shows up what I have to really work on. So.
Dr. Anita, thank you. I mean, I have so many questions to ask you because your life is so intersectional. But before I continue asking Dr. Anita, I would also like to maybe just open up the floor and check in with the participants. If anybody would like to ask a question right now, you're very welcome. And if not, I anyway have a long list of questions to ask. Okay, Senna, would you like to ask a question? Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for this talk. And I would like to ask this one question, how can I summarize it? Like, recently I've been diagnosed with a disease called ankylosing spondylitis. And because of this, I'm reading a lot of things and doing this Google doctoring and all that. And then I'm also exploring the spiritual approaches to healing and all that. And there is this trend about it's not a trend maybe, but like seeing the disease as a means to spiritual growth, like as if it's telling you something, especially autoimmune diseases, people talk about this way. I would like to know what Dr. Anita thinks about these approaches, about diseases and healing and spirituality.
And may I just share, Senna is dialing in from Turkey, from Istanbul. So just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Rachel, I
Dr.
think
Anita?
You've gone off. Your Wi-Fi is probably not so good, huh? So
I see.
Should I answer?
Yes, please go ahead and answer, doctor.
Sonia, are you
Anita
listening?
ji?
Can you hear? Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay.
Please go
You
ahead.
went off for a moment, and so it's very cliched, Sonia, to say that accept the disease for, as a spiritual learning. It's easy for us who haven't been through it to say that to somebody else, but there is some truth in it also. I mean, cliches come from truth of some kind, right? So, like I said in my case, that injection, I mean, that very possibility of having HIV is what pushed me in this path. So, when you have a disease on a physical level, okay, so one is that you do have something, there is something organic there. So you can make it worse for yourself by not accepting it and pushing it away and saying, why me? Okay. Or you can say, okay, it's there. Let's work with it. And at least if my attitude is more accepting, it's not that there will be no pain. It's not that your HLA-B27 is going to go away, because that is a marker, it's going to stay. It's not that you're not going to get all the sequelae of ankylosing spondylitis. As you know very well, you've Googled it. As the years go by, it will have all the things it's going to have. But you mentally may not be as hurt and bothered as much as you would be if you didn't have a spiritual path or ability to understand and accept. So it's not that you, and also, the immune system, like I said, is an absolutely amazing system. So stress aggravates it, it irritates it, it causes more inflammation, it causes more. And I did a talk on anxiety and the gut immune system recently in Delhi. So, you know how anxiety aggravates the immune system. It'll start getting more irritated, it'll hit more. So maybe if without anxiety, you can slow it down a bit. It's not going to be a steamroller, it's going to be a slower train. So that way there's a more physical, you can see that happening and will happen. There are, of course, reports that by spiritual practices, diseases go away, but I'm too much of a scientist to accept it without clear evidence. I need proper evidence, I need before and after, I need all that stuff before I would even make a claim like that. But any spiritual practice, doesn't matter what it is, will give you more control of your own mind, which will make you less angry and hurt and traumatized by the disease. Because a lot of pain comes from why me?
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you so much, Sena, for the question. And I would like to, at this point, ask Dr. Anita something. Dr. Anita, you have a very close root teacher, 𝗔ህ𝗶𝘁. Am I right? Is the name correct? Yes. 𝗔ህ𝗶𝘁. Sorry, 𝗔ህ𝗶𝘁. And you were very, firstly, I would like you to say a little bit about, just the presence and aura of what you felt with 𝗔ህ𝗶𝘁. But you were also present as Geshe-la was dying. And you were also present after his death, because of course we know, I of course completely agree with you, and any kind of phenomena that we see which defy science, we normally see it in very high level practitioners. So, not to say that, we are some high level practitioners and so just through the power of mind, we can, cure or turn diseases around. But His Holiness the Dalai Lama has, of course, always encouraged scientists to, bring practitioners into the laboratories and do all kinds of tests, not only while they're living, but also at the time they're dying and after they die, when there is this phenomena called suptam, where it is said that the subtle consciousness, we are clinically proclaimed to be dead, but the subtle consciousness has not left the body. And the great yogi, he or she, is sitting in suptam, meditating on the clear light mind. So can you just speak a little bit about your experience with Geshe? Wangchenla, and how that may have shifted, this hardcore scientific, reason-based approach of Dr. Anita, what door that may have opened. Thank you.
So 𝗔ih𝗶𝘁 was just an absolutely amazing human being. And I must say that, so the history is that I was looking for, I knew this was my path. So when I came to India, I thought it would be really easy. Buddhism would be waiting for me, and it wasn't. So I went to Dharamshala, but as a tourist, just like a tourist, nothing happened, everywhere. And so I said, not for me, it's not happening. And then my 𝗔ih𝗶𝘁 from Delhi landed up in Goa, and somehow or the other, I made contact. And then 10 days of his teaching, I said, I want to take refuge. So he looked at me and said, my God, I've never had this impact on someone before in 10 days that, someone, and I said, no, it's a long term. I wanted to do this. So he sent me to 𝗔ih𝗶𝘁, so in Mungod. And this was in July, height of the monsoon in India. And Mungod is in the Western Ghats. You have to cross that. And I said to my husband, I want to go. I said, my long-suffering husband, as you can see, said, now? And I said, now. And so he said, okay. He said, 2 small kids, we dumped them in the car and we drove to Mungod in the extreme rain. And we landed up to see 𝗔ih𝗶𝘁. And everyone we asked, everyone knew when Mungod who 𝗔ih𝗶𝘁 was, And we went to him and I looked at him. And I just looked at him and I knew in his eyes, it was such it's inexpressible, it's inexpressible, this thing that he had around him, and I knew that whole journey through that monsoon was worth it, And so he said, okay, and I spoke to him, such a gentle being, amazing being, And so next day I took refuge with him, and that's how we started our journey together for 8 years. On and off I would go and he would teach, but the last 2 years of his life was when I spent a lot of time with him as a doctor, and we went from hospital to hospital for various treatments and things. So we had done this, he had this stomach issue and diabetes and many other things. So we had done this CT scan and in Hubli, and they had said that it was stomach cancer, but the 1st degree, And so we went to Manipal Hospital in Bangalore, and so they did the fMRI, and they said, no, it's not the 1st degree, it's a 4th stage cancer, and this is the end, So we are going to give him about 6 months. And so the doctor came into the room and said to 𝗔ih𝗶𝘁, I have this beautiful picture of him lying down there, completely not sitting there. And so the doctor says, it's 4th stage cancer. And so he says, okay. And 𝗔ih𝗶𝘁 spoke beautiful English because he was in England for a long time. And so, and the doctor's holding his hand. And so 𝗔ih𝗶𝘁 said, okay. And so he says, do you know? He said, yeah. He said, do you want anything done? And he said, no. He said, how long do I have? He said, 6 months. He said, okay. He said, okay. And then the doctor started telling him all his issues and his problems. And 𝗔𝗶𝘁 is holding his hand. And the doctor's opening his heart and saying, I've got these problems, I've got this. And 𝗔𝗶𝘁 is saying, okay, and listen, this is a guy who just got a diagnosis of 4th stage cancer and 6 months to live. Okay, and he's listening to these. And the doctors were coming one by one, opening their heart and talking to him about their problems. And he was sitting there. He said, okay, And then he said, so then the doctor outside asked me, did he understand what I said to him about 4th stage? And I said, yes, he did. And the doctor said, what is it that makes him be like this? He said, I want that. He said, I also want to learn. And I said, this is a lifetime practice that has given him the ability to accept a sentence, a death sentence like this with so much equanimity and grace, And so then we decided and we went back to the monastery where he, 6 months of his life, he passed there, the last 6 months. I mean, it was about a little bit more than 6 months, maybe a month more or so. And so as he was dying, I was there more and more, mainly to prevent any pain, if there was any pain. And at the last part, as he was having difficulty breathing, I was helping him through that or whatever. And so then I got then I had to go back to Goa because I'd left 2 small kids and patients. And then they called me to say that the end has come, so drive back. So, I drove back. I have a great fear of Indian highways, especially the Ghats. But Geshe-La's, I overcame all those fears because I wanted to be with him at that time. Nothing, no trains. It's so difficult to get, those days, no flights. So I drove down in less than 3.5 hours to Mungod from Goa, got there, and I got a message from His Holiness's office saying that we want you to monitor the whole death process, which the monks were not happy about. Even though I was a doctor and I was close to him, they weren't happy because these are, though science is important for them, it is also their teacher, and this is it's a practice. They don't want to disturb the practice. So I promised them that I wouldn't do much. I would just do a few things to make sure the process was going. And they said, all right. And so every 4 hours for those days, I was with him, and he had passed away clinically. So, but I didn't trust, you hear, you read all these things, but like I said, as a science person, it's hard for me to accept these things happen, unless I have empirical evidence. And so I called the doctor in Hubli and I said, just send an ice casket. I don't believe it's October, it's August 18th, it's raining, it's humid, he has no AC in his room. I think the decomposition is going to start right away. So just send an ice casket, And the doctor also was quite shocked. They said, what do you mean 7 days they're going to keep him, And so I said, no, it's going to happen. Let's see. So when I went into the room, it was completely clinically dead. That I can tell you because I placed my stethoscope. I listened for the breath sounds, the heart sounds, nothing. No heart sound, no breath sound, nothing. But around his heart, there was a very warm feeling. And his feet, when I touched it, still felt like they were live. There was no rigor mortis set in or any of those things. Normally in India, because of the heat, rigor mortis sets in very fast. But at the intellectual level, I didn't accept, I thought it's going to happen soon. And every 4 hours, no change. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. And so I thought then there was this very faint flowery smell in the room. So I thought these guys were lighting incense, and they said, no, there's no incense anyway, but there's just this flowery smell, And the peace one felt in the room, people get scared of dead bodies. I don't, because I've dealt with dead bodies for a long time in my life. But just sitting there, the atmosphere, the peace one feels with that process. 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, At 7th day, finally, there was some darkening of the doors, and then the monks said he's passed away because from the nose something comes out, and then they said passed away. But utterly astonishing. So this is the deepest stage of meditation, samadhi, that I was able to document myself. If someone else had said, I would have, I'm not blessed with a very mindful of faith, unfortunately. I just keep on, I need evidence for everything, And this was something that I saw with my own eyes and with my own stethoscope and my own, things. So this is called tukdam, when a very highly realized practitioner goes into very, very deep states of meditation where they are in touch with what is called the clear light mind. So, so it really changed my views about some of these things. I still have difficulty about, thinking about even goddesses or whatever, but at least where this is concerned, I am now very, very clear, and I know that this happens with my own empirical evidence. And now His Holiness is going to do more of this. So we have a collaboration with NIMHANS now, the National Institute of Mental Health and neurology in Bangalore. And we're going to check more of these things to see, try and get ECG, EEG evidence and other kind of evidence on this process. Is Tejal there, or she
Yes,
disappeared?
yes. I'm sure. Just for a short while. I'm sorry, I have to say I'm in Himachal Pradesh, and sometimes my internet is not so good. So my apologies. But just for a short while, I did have an internet blip. I would like to reopen to our audience and ask if somebody would like to. Kelsangla, would you like to ask a question? Please go.
Anita ji, hello. Anita, you manifest the project initiated by His Holiness called Science Meets Dharma. Anita ji, you are the manifestation of this project, because coming from the science world and now being a practitioner of Buddhism combined, you know the project. My question is, His Holiness talks very often about the hygiene of physical. And then he says, this is the modern way, but he wants to put stress, focus on hygiene of emotion. Anita ji, how do you deal this with your patients, your family? How do you deal with the hygiene of emotions? Thank you.
So Kelsangla has been the initiator of the Science Meets Dharma. And if you think of me as a practitioner, you should really know Kelsangla. Extremely humble, very, very self-effacing, will do anything for someone. I remember he went from Delhi all the way to Dehradun to bring soup for this person and came back from Dehradun to Delhi so that the person could benefit from the soup. I mean, that is a level that I can only aspire to. So Kelsangla is someone that I look up to and say, may I become like this at some point. So, so this is him. Yeah. So emotional hygiene, Kelsangla, I have to start with myself first. Forget patients and family. If I don't have it in myself, emotional hygiene, there's no way I can even convince anyone else. I think it's of prime importance, what His Holiness is saying. And it doesn't have to be only from the Dharma side. It's practical. You can see for yourself. I'm in the US right now, as you know. The problems are huge. I mean, just huge mental health problems. India, we had 3 suicides in Goa University in August of last year, 2020. Young people are just without, they join the university thinking they're going to have a certain profession. But now they suddenly find the profession no longer exists in this sudden pandemic, post-pandemic kind of situation. I mean, it's horrible. I mean, what's going on? So without emotional hygiene, we are not giving them any kind of tools to deal with difficult situations. Resilience, for example. I spoke to a person who's 101 years old from Tibet, Sevang Namgyal's father, and I was asking him when they came from Tibet at that time, what gave him the strength and the power to continue, because it's such difficult, hard times. And he said it was resilience. Today, I think most of the young people, resilience is not there because there's no training in emotional hygiene. So in Goa University, when this happened, we introduced 8 videos on meditation from Drepung Losalingos. We have an MOU. And the Vice Chancellor made it compulsory for every student to listen to those, and professors to listen to those videos and to practice those 8 videos, for 8 weeks. And we did find a substantial, we had no suicides after that. But again, I'm not going to correlate this and say that this is this unless we have more clear data. But if we don't teach our children, how to identify in themselves first what is wrong, and then to ask for what they need. We are going to create people who are going to be emotional misfits if they can't identify in themselves. So in Canada, they have this wonderful new program with this Holiness's initiative that has started. I was at the Mind Life conference. Very, very good work. So they've got a chart for young preschool kids. Okay. So the chart, when the child comes in every morning, the child says that I am feeling this. And they show that this is what I'm feeling, sad, miserable, but there's a huge number of emotions, not just sad, happy, whatever. And then there's another chart that says, this is what I want. This is what I need, a hug. I need someone to say something to me, a pat, or sit next to someone, whatever, and it has drastically changed these children's learning capacity. It has drastically changed how they react to other people. So they started this with teenagers, to the point the parents of the teenagers are now coming and telling the teachers, can we also attend these classes? Because, our teenager who was so grouchy and miserable is so happy and is able to tell us what he wants. So maybe we as adults now also need these classes. So I think that encouraging your child to say what they really feel without fear that they'll be judged or anything like that is a very, very important place for teachers, for parents, and for doctors as well. I mean, if a patient can't tell you openly what they're feeling, how are they going to be well? So I think this is where emotional hygiene is of essence in our society. We've forgotten this, and it's very important.
Thank you so much, Kalsanga, for joining us and for your question. And I would like to now invite Gorilla to please ask a question. Gorilla is dialing in from New Delhi, a very well-established photographer. Please go ahead, Gorilla.
Thank you so much, Tejala. Such a precious conversation. And thank you, Dr. Anita. I had two questions. One, I wanted to ask how you keep emotion out when dealing with your patients, and as a Buddhist practitioner, how you have learned to work with or transform or control emotion, which must surely be difficult. I know even as a photographer, I sometimes, emotion is very powerful. And the other was just how you frame reincarnation, and how you have understood it as a doctor and as a scientist, and so thank you so much. I'm grateful.
So the first question is the easier one. So I don't control my emotion. I don't think I do. I mean, I think the best part about being a doctor with a patient is my emotional connection with them. If I control how I feel, how would I feel their pain? Okay, but there are two different things. There's something called empathy, and there's something called sympathy. Okay, sympathy is saying, thank God it's not me. Okay, empathy is putting yourself in their shoes and feeling it. Okay, but in that there's loving kindness and there's compassion. Now, because of Tanya Singer's work in University of Colorado, it's an amazing amount of work that's come out, which is incredible for us doctors and any care practitioners, okay, in any healthcare fields. So there's a lot of burnout among doctors and nurses. It's because we're using the loving kindness pathway, saying that, may you be happy and whatever, but you put yourself in their place and so you get burnt out, okay? But if you look at the compassion pathway, which is a completely different pathway, it lights up green in certain ways. And it came out of Matthew Ricard's, when they put the Matthew Ricard into the thing, fMRI, that's how it came out. When they said compassion, totally different pathway. Compassion is, may you be free of suffering. Okay, loving kindness is just like me. They're just like me. They're feeling pain. Oh, just like my pain. So if you feel that, then you do need that initially. But if you keep going with that, you'll burn out. You'd absolutely burn out. You can't. But to feel, may you be free of suffering. You remove the I completely. Okay, may you be free of suffering, and you do everything in your power that may they be free of suffering, and do it. You don't burn out at all. So again, an anecdote is, I was supposed to work in Hunsur. I was working in Hunsur during one of the teachings, and there were 30,000 people. I was running the hospital day and night and doing the camp the whole day and 5 days. And what I noticed was I wasn't tired at all. Whereas in my clinic with 8 patients, I'm exhausted, So I said, what is it that there I could do this for hours after hours and not get tired? Whereas here I was. There was no any attachment to praise or reputation or money or anything. It was just there, and that's why I wasn't tired. Whereas in my own clinic, I become the boss, I'm the person, I'm this doctor, I've got this white coat on, so that what is tiring. Oh, the patient didn't come on time. How dare they not think of my time? How did they come late? How can they not think of me? How could they do this? This is where all the tiredness is coming from and the burnout was coming from. Whereas there, none of this was there, So compassion and empathy are two different things completely. So if you concentrate on the compassion pathway, the burnout is almost negligible. And I have a feeling that Mother Teresa and His Holiness, people I've seen who are constantly there, the sense of I is not there. When the sense of I is not there, then you're totally open, There's nothing to get tired or burnt out or any of those things. So I'm saying they have it. I'm just saying as a doctor, I don't have any of that. But if you try for that, then, but it doesn't mean you don't feel for the person. It's not building a wall and staying behind the wall and seeing that person. You feel, you hold the person's arm, you look into their eyes, you feel what they're feeling. It's a mother who comes with a child who's sick. How can you not feel, You do. But also where the treatment is concerned, if I have to choose a treatment for a patient, this is a rule I strictly follow. This I don't change, is that 1, would I take the medicine that I'm prescribing? 2, would I give it to my children? More important. If I don't think I would give it to my children, under no circumstances, under absolutely no circumstances, would I give it to a patient. So that's where the empathy and emotion comes in. But when you're working with it, may you feel, if you take on too much, you're going to burn out, you're going to be useless for everybody else. So there's a very tight balance, like a guitar string, that you keep it. If it's too tight, you can't make a sound. If it's too loose, you can't make a sound. So you have to hold it in between there to say, yes, I feel for the patient, but not get paralyzed by that feeling. So that's the first question. The second one is very hard. Okay. I don't know. I struggle with this one. But there is a thing that says that I have great trust in His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. Okay, I think he's brilliant. I've seen his mind work with scientists. I've seen the way he has the clarity and practical knowledge, everything else. So if he says that there is and he trusts it, then I'm willing to accept it, because 90% of the other things that I see him do and I've seen with my eye, I trust that. So the 10% that I don't know, I'm willing to accept that right now. For the time being, I'm willing to accept till I get a better understanding of it as to how it works. I'm willing to accept it from him. And hopefully at some point I'll be able to sit here and say, I understand it scientifically. But there are a lot of new studies coming up that are showing some of these things. But the Tugdam that I spoke about, that's what I could see with my eyes. That much, if I can understand, perhaps then it's not such a long haul to think about reincarnation. coming back or whatever, right? So, but scientifically, I cannot give you an answer on that.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Dr. Anita. Thank you.
This is such an engaging conversation, and I have not even checked off 4 or 5 questions on my list. There are so many more things that we plan to speak about, and I'm just wondering that, of course, we have to have another round of this interview, but from our participants, I really would say if there are any more questions, please go ahead. This is the time.
I don't know
Ros-
anything, okay? I mean, I'm the wrong person to ask. I know a little bit about medicine. About Buddhism, I know very little. So please take what I say out of complete skepticism and check with others who know better.
Rosita, you have unmuted yourself. Would you like to ask a question? Yes, please go ahead.
Good evening, doctor, and absolutely mind-boggling conversation. I mean, I can't tell you how much I'm enjoying myself. I just want
Thank
to,
you.
I just want to ask you, what is the kind of routine you follow before you go to work and after you come back? Because I know there is so many things. There is that I didn't control this, and I could have controlled that. And what will happen if this happens? And there's so many questions that before, how you ground yourself, and after you come back, how you ground back yourself.
So it's very important. That's the crux of anyone's practice. The motivation, intention that you set for the day to come, So I start very early in the morning because there's no other way I can get things done the way I need to get done, especially because I'm doing this master's program, which is extensive as it is. And then as a family householder and a doctor, it's sometimes I wonder, whether I should have a few more arms and few more heads and things like that. But so I get up very early in the morning. And the first thing I do is I do a simple mindfulness practice, breathing meditation, and I have a meditation practice. And then I do my studies. And then, of course, once the family wakes up, then, of course, the other stuff, things that come. If I have patients from Delhi, if anyone's here from Delhi, forgive me, they're difficult people. So I think to myself, they're just humans, just like myself. So if someone does something or someone may I please, not be upset, and may I, treat them well and stuff like that. So then I sort of know who's coming. So I know that I put that in place. And so when I start driving, I chant my Heart Sutra mantra instead of listening to music. When I start the car, the music starts. So that gives me a reminder that, okay, switch it off. And then I do that practice before I get to my clinic. Once I get in my clinic, I first walk in, I sit down, I do a small practice saying, may I be beneficial to everyone today who comes to my clinic, and whoever I touch, may they be well, So I do that. During the thing, like I said, I use my mindfulness to listen to the patient. And when I'm doing the test, I have to do the allergy test on the patient. So when I'm doing that, I follow what my teacher said about saying, not always. If it's very busy, then I have these things get lost. But if there are enough few patients and I have time, then I can do all these things. It depends, So coming back home, after I come back, then again, I do take a downtime of half an hour. My timing is very erratic. It could be 1:30, it could be 3, it could be any time. So when I come home, I know that's the time I'm going to lose my temper if I have low glycemic, because I've not eaten, sugar is very low and exhausted. 100% anything will trigger it at that point, And so I make sure I keep away from everybody at that time so that I don't lose my temper, and I ground myself again. And then the family thing starts and the kids start, or whatever else, my husband, whatever. So at every point, you have to preserve. At this point, when you see a sapling, when you plant a sapling, you always plant something around the sapling to protect the sapling so the cow doesn't eat it or someone else doesn't come and eat it, right? When it's bigger, then you don't need that guard. And then when it's a big tree, you don't need anything. So I'm at the sprouting stage of the sapling. So my mind needs a lot of protection. So, for example, something small, the virtuous, non-virtuous actions, for example, I give what is called an allergy vaccine, So if I order a large amount of it, the expiry is 2 years, right? So I'm not sure that I won't be compelled to give it to someone just because it's expiring. I'm not sure yet. I mean, I know I won't give it if someone doesn't need it. I know for a fact I wouldn't do it. But if someone, I would have thought I'll wait for a month and decide whether they need it or not. If it's expiring in my fridge, would my mind play games and say they need it now? So therefore, I don't keep it in my fridge at all. I order it as and when the patient needs it, even though I pay a large courier bill every time. So this is protecting my mind, right? So similarly, an intention in the morning to protect my mind against some difficult patient who comes, or when I come back home, I protect my mind to keep myself for half an hour away from everyone so I don't get irritated till I've eaten my lunch or something like that. So at every stage, you have to protect your mind. So the driving protects my mind against all the people who cut lanes. So if I'm chanting the Heart Sutra, I won't have a 4-lettered word. I still do when someone really cuts or runs or does something. But at least that playing in the background, at least I don't immediately react and say, oh, what a so-and-so or whatever, because they've done it, So this is mind protection, that you have to watch your mind. And if you don't do it for a few days, again, you fall down and you have to start again. So again, it's all practice, habit formation. Once a habit forms, then you will not react. But I'm a short-tempered person, so I need much more work for this, and I'm also very self-righteous, so I have to really work hard on non-judgment, and especially at COVID times, if someone came without a mask, oh God, I mean, forget in my clinic, anywhere else, if I saw someone without a mask, all that thing comes up, and so to say, okay, so that's why. So I have to watch my mind very often. I'm not blessed with a easygoing temperament.
Thank you, everybody, for your very engaging questions. And of course, Dr. Anita, for, you're very frank and humble, down to earth sharing. It's really inspiring, very inspiring. And because we are running out of time, I'm so sorry. I really would like us to do this practice with Dr. Anita. So I would now, this is one of the things that we were discussing, that in the initial phases of one's spiritual journey, it's very easy to get into spiritual bypassing, where because, it's like suddenly you're like, I have to be good, I have to be virtuous, I have to do the right thing. And maybe Dr. Anita, in your case in particular, you have a very large public profile. You are interacting as a doctor. You're interacting also as somebody, who kind of represents also His Holiness the Dalai Lama, or the face of Buddhism in Goa. And also from your childhood, all these pressures, what you were saying on an Indian woman especially, and women in general, you have to be the good one. So even if you get angry, you're upset, you're jealous, you just kind of paper over it, you might suppress it. And then it kind of builds a resentment. And at some point it comes out, and it's not good, and it's anyway not good for our spiritual growth. So then we learn slowly, and Dr. Anita, maybe you'll speak about this more before we start the practice, that it's very important not to suppress these emotions, as you were also sharing with Gorila, that we have to feel it. And yet, even while we don't suppress and we fully feel these emotions, Yet we learn how to equanimously moderate our resilience so that, so please, Dr. Anita, if you can speak about this a little bit more, and then why did you choose the practice that you have chosen to do with us today before we start the guided practice with you? And of course, we have to have a second round of the interview because we barely touched.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we put these masks on, I have a mask of starting with a daughter, a good daughter from a household where the family's reputation or honor is dependent on my behavior. Then, mother, my son said, can you not stop coloring your hair till my graduation is over? I don't want you to come with gray hair to my graduation. So it's what a young looking mother. So those masks of, society. Then doctor mask, very, very powerful mask. Oh, I'm this good doctor, just great doctor who's compassionate, who's kind, who's this and that. And then the last mask of a Buddhist, the face of the Dalai Lama in Goa. So it's always there. You say anything, they say, oh, what kind of a Buddhist? I mean, that's what any criticism today from my family, from my loved ones, from anywhere outside is, what kind of a Buddhist are you? You keep going to Dharamsala, you keep taking time off and doing retreats, but you still, react this way, you've said this, you've said that, So that, because it, has in my mind, a feeling that, oh, it'll reflect badly on the Buddhism per se and its holiness, that's a mask that I am most frightened about. And that's a mask that I'm always worried about saying anything. But these are all masks, this is not who I am. So like I said, I am a short-tempered, self-righteous person. So if I constantly put up these masks of this really kind person it's not going to work. I mean, at some point, down there, I'm resenting it. I'm, trying to do things which are not who I am. So to learn to say, like I said, those children saying in Canada, what am I feeling and what do I need, are essence. So that's where today's practice that I feel very strongly about Indian women and women in general, but Indian women, is we have lost complete touch with our physicality and our emotional life, because we always told what we feel and how physically we feel as well. So, a lot of women patients who come to my clinic, when I ask them where's the pain, they can very rarely locate the pain. They don't know. When I've touched them, I say, is it here? Is it here? Then they have to think, because they've totally lost. So when I lead the meditation class where I ask them to feel their bodies, they can't feel their bodies. They just can't. They say, we don't feel anything. That's awful. I mean, it's really, we don't. I mean, think about it. I mean, look around and see. We're constantly, someone is touching us without our okay, in the bus, in schools and everywhere. I mean, so we developed this thing against our bodies. Then our feelings, because we're never allowed to say what we want, what we feel, how we really feel. We are trained to go to a in-law's house, a mother-in-law saying something, and you able to accept it for the sake of the family staying together. So with these things in mind, when we don't say, we suppress, it's going to come out in the form of illness. It's going to come out in the form of hard, difficult illness. Autoimmune disease is one of the stress-related illnesses. Cancer is another one. Because, and also women don't take care of their bodies. I mean, Goa, what I find astonishing is men come to us with malignancies, for example, first or second stage, we can figure it out. Women invariably come in the third and fourth stages. So I asked them, how come? And one, they didn't feel it. Two, they always seek care for the children first, the husbands next, the families, and then lastly for themselves. So they don't come till they are late in the disease. So this is where I feel strongly that when I teach a group of women, or not teach, I lead a meditation group of women, I always start with first for feelings of your body, and then compassion, self-compassion for ourselves, So I was in a retreat with a Zen monk called Sudhamacharya, Venerable Sudhamacharya from Japan. So I said to him, me personally, that when it comes to self-compassion, may I be happy, I just skip through it, but I don't see what I have to be compassionate to myself. I've got everything. I've got a nice house, I've got a car, I've got a good husband, I've got good children, a good family, I've got a profession, I've got everything. I've got nothing to be compassionate about myself. But when I see somebody else, then I feel, oh, may they be free of suffering. But myself, I just go through it rapidly. So he said, yeah. He said, you don't have any ill will, you don't have any anger. He said, you don't have any jealousy. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, So that's what I can be self-compassionate towards. I mean, that's the cause of my suffering. Ill will, anger, jealousy, God knows what else, ignorance. So why should it only be for what else? I mean, look, so physically, if I have an illness, may I be free of that? Emotionally, may I be free of anger, ill will, jealousy, ignorance, doubt, which causes so much of suffering and pain. When you doubt others, doubt their sincerity, their trust, all these hundreds of things, So once you see that, and it opens up an entire thing, self-compassion. First, without self-compassion, how can you have compassion for others? You don't even know what you are feeling. You don't even know your own pain, and you're trying to help the world. How does it work? And to be honest. And so I've noticed now that I'm able to go beyond little bit, tiny, just a bit, just in the last year. I'm 56 years old. So we'll be 56 years old next week, but 56 years old. So in the last year, I think I'm learning to say things as they are. But still, there's so much guilt when I say no to someone. I was Buddhist, How can I say no? But to prevent a burnout, to take time off, to go into nature, to go for a walk, that's self-compassion, There's nothing to feel guilty about, So unless you have that, so learning to say no to someone. Most important, how many of us say no? We don't say no. We keep doing things and we resent it, right? So learning to say no, learning to say what you really feel without feeling bad about saying what you really feel, but without rancor, without saying it harshly, but to say, these things. So let's start small, basically, something small and then little bigger, and then saying a little bit more, and then not to do with compassion for yourself and others, but without feeling that, the need to do it because of your reputation or because of praise or feeling good about yourself or any of these things. This is probably for me the hardest thing, learning to say no personally. Very tough, especially because of all those masks that I carry, all those burdens. Sometimes I wonder what I am without those masks. I don't know myself yet. So
Thank you, Dr. Anita. With that, may I please request you to lead us in this guided practice?
Okay, so I don't know how many of you do it on a regular basis, but please, I know you think you know the posture, then you sit straight. Main thing is your back has to be straight, whether you cross your legs or not, or put your feet on the ground, doesn't matter. Just keep your legs crossed. If you can keep your eyes open lightly, you can. Otherwise, for this practice, you don't necessarily. It might be better with your eyes closed. So just bring yourself to the present moment where we're sitting. Bring your attention to your body. Now bring your attention to your breath. As you're breathing in, just think, I know that I'm breathing in. And as you breathe out, think, I know that I'm breathing out. As you breathe in, just note the length of your breath. The breath is long or short. As you breathe out, notice the length of your breath. Let's do this for a couple of cycles. Now, as I breathe in, I'm aware of my entire body. And as I breathe out, I'm aware of my entire body. Start feeling from your toes to your ankles, slowly to your calves, your thighs, your lower body, chest, back, shoulders, upper arms, lower arms, fingers, face, and top of the head. And breathing out, I'm aware of my entire body. Now breathing in, I'm aware of all the stress that I'm holding. And breathing out, I release the stress. From this deep, relaxed state of breath, mind, and body, let's begin the compassion meditation. Bring yourself to mind and think, may I have happiness and the causes of happiness. And think, may I be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. Bring to mind something that particularly troubles you. Whether physically you are in pain or any mental emotion that you struggle with. Could it be anger or ill will, envy? Just bring it to mind clearly and think, may I be free of suffering and its cause, this envy, ill will. May I be well and happy. May I be free of suffering and its causes. As you do this often, you will notice that a certain part of your body that you keep this particular emotion. So as you breathe in and out on a daily basis, you will find that your breath stops at that region. And if you stay there, this emotion shows itself. May I be well and happy. May I be free of suffering and its causes. Now bring to mind someone you love dearly, someone you're very close to, someone you feel is hurting. So on your in-breath, you breathe in. May they be well and happy. And out-breath, you breathe out from the same place, that compassion for yourself, now that you've generated to them. May they be free of suffering and its causes. They also have anger, ill will, envy. That's where they're suffering from. Understanding deeply where it comes from. May they be well and happy. May they be free of suffering. Now bring to mind some neutral person that you don't know very well. Just met on the road, maybe your grocer or your dry cleaner, anyone, someone else you don't know. You think, may they be well and happy. And may they be free of suffering and its causes. They've been rude to you, then you know perhaps they're losing their home, their mortgage, their job, their business. They have a huge amount of problems. Who knows? We don't know. May they be well and happy. May they be free of suffering and its causes. Feel the goodwill that's emanating out of you. Bring to mind a difficult person, someone you've really had a lot of conflict with, bad feelings, bad history. Bring them really clearly to mind. See where their pain is coming from. Again, it will be the same causes: ill will, anger, jealousy, ignorance, doubt. They are under the control of these same causes of suffering that we are. So may you be well and happy. May you be free of suffering and its causes. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, one of the teachers, once said that every time you don't react to someone, you are contributing to world peace. So, when we think we can't do anything with the state of the world, just by not reacting to someone, just imagine we are contributing to world peace. Think about this and think, may all be well and happy. May all be free of suffering and its causes. In this intense space of well-being, let us dedicate. May this practice that we've done, may it indeed be the cause of world peace. May all be happy. May all be free of suffering. May all countries be safe. Maybe not be at war. Bring your attention back to your body. Bring your attention back to your breath. Slowly open your eyes.
Dr. Anita, thank you so much. There was something very heartfelt and tranquil in the way you led us. So on behalf of course, everyone here, thank you for this very honest, heartfelt sharing, which has hopefully opened our hearts in this open heart conversation. And we pray that many, many beings continue to benefit from all your work in many spheres. May you have a long life free of obstacles, and may we always have Sangha members like you on this journey to fully awaken. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Tejal. I was really surprised when you asked. Like I said, deeply, really surprised. And I'm just an ordinary person. You've had such amazing people like Preeti and, Annie Choyang and, all these venerable Robina, all these people who've gone through life and God knows what realization. And then I thought, why me? So, I'm here just to show all of you to some extent that even ordinary, completely ordinary people can, do a little bit of practice. So for that reason, thank you for having me, So bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We'll be in this